Three, two. Okay, welcome back to New Realities. This is a weekly show I've been doing on YouTube, which talks about, well, we've been calling it a UFO roundtable, but it talks about all aspects of how are we really understanding this phenomena that doesn't make sense to the world we are used to. So that is why tonight we have an excellent psychic with us who's going to tap into those other realms. And me and Henrietta have been hosting this show for a while. But Henrietta, why don't you introduce Marla and why are so excited about having her here?
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone.
I'm just going to bring one more person in and let's go. Okay, but go ahead. Go ahead. Do it. Go ahead.
So our guest this week is, it's Nadi, good, is with us.
Nadi.
So our guest this week is Marle Lombard, who she's a wonderful psychic, intuitive, whatever you want to call that. But I actually have never met her live, but I've had a few phone sessions with her, many over the years. We met in a very serendipitous, interesting way. I actually met her ex-husband. He was telling me about his ex-wife, and I went, "Is she a psychic?" And he went, "How did you know?" I didn't know. So I had.
Takes one to know one.
That's
right.
What so anyway, I have had many phone sessions with Marla, and she gets extraordinarily accurate, wonderful, interesting, metaphorical information that sort of has built a map for me over my few years of sessions with her. Like, she's really, really a gifted psychic, and we also get along really well and have lots of fantastic conversations about everything, ranging from how science and the psychic kind of meet. How can we look at what the psychic ability of humans actually is? And I was interested in having Marla with us tonight because we had a physicist last week. We've had many different guests, experts in the UFO abduction realm. And I just thought, to have somebody like Marla join us, she gets such kind of strong, interesting information that I thought we could sort of experiment a bit and see, where we go with the UFO phenomenon and the abduction phenomenon, and sort of where it fits into our, consciousness expansion, our evolution as humans. I, for one, believe that once you've had sort of some kind of contact with any of these beings or crafts, your consciousness is is likely to change, and your abilities are likely to also be quite confounding, with premonitory dreaming, or psychic abilities yourself, or increased empathy, increased creativity, increased productivity, is my sense. I mean, there's a whole other aspect to it where it's very sort of traumatic and scary, but we're just kind of digging and exploring in those realms.
Yeah, we're exploring all of it. I just want to bring Nadi, who's also an explorer. She just did a whole presentation on crop circles a few weeks ago, which was really great. Nadi, you want to say anything about the psychic realms as far as UFOs?
Yeah, my coverage is terrible.
That's okay.
Okay, I might need to turn my video off. But
right.
I recently, I'm a huge fan of Marie Rodwell. Marla, it's nice to meet you. Henrietta, nice to meet you
too.
I'm a huge fan of Marie Rodwell, and I recently did a call sort of going over her information. And she was part of free. Can anybody remember what that stands for?
It was a survey of like 6,000 people involved in UFOs.
Yeah, and I have it here. And so they did that, and 80% of the people reported that they had an expansion in consciousness, an up level in their psychic abilities. Their, you could say your multidimensionality. They began to have an awareness of other civilizations, of contact, and the benevolent folks who are here to help us. So it's really, I think it's so much more common than the propaganda that has tried to spread the word that they're scary. And, I think that probably Marla and many of us are here to change that dialogue. And FREE stands for, it's the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And so they've done so much work to really, about, is my coverage so bad? Can you hear me okay?
It's okay. You just went in and out a little bit. That's okay. I know you had a monsoon there or something, but let me talk.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my excitement. I love to hear about people who really do see the positive, the psychic expansion, and us really moving into our true capacities after contact. So yay!
But she was saying she really hasn't had any experience in this realm, but it's just like another dial. I mean, everyone's psychic. I'm sure you're tuned into certain levels of existence. This is another one that people don't normally consider because there's so much astral information and otherworldly that you have to really kind of switch your dial all the way to the other end to start to be aware of these beings, I think, that are at a whole other frequency. So, but before we get there, Marla, do you want to talk about how you became a psychic, your dramatic awakening and all that?
How did you know it was dramatic? Oh my goodness.
I was psychic about, no, I don't know. It felt dramatic because.
You're totally psychic, Alan.
I'm psychic. Yes, we're all psychic, of course. Of course. No, I never doubt that, but I don't even know why I said that, but obviously it was.
It was very dramatic to me, at least.
Well, so tell us.
In my late 30s and maybe had about 3 psychic thoughts during my lifetime.
Were you a normal person living a normal life? What was that?
A normal person living a normal life.
What does that mean? Kids, family, job? What did that mean?
Thank you for those questions. Well, at the time, I was divorced. I was living in LA. I was working at the super chic art gallery that I loved. Art is my personal passion. I knew where I was going. I knew that I was going to stay in the art world, etc. So one day I was at the gallery and my car was in the shop. And we decided that this contractor who helped install big shows would take me to the mechanic on the way home. He was headed in that direction. So it was all very normal. I didn't really know him. I just knew that he had a girlfriend who had long blonde hair because I saw them at the openings. Okay, so go to his little truck and I sit down, this normal person who I'd had deep thoughts, by the way. I'm not saying that I was living a completely surface life because that wasn't true, but I didn't really have an interest in psychic or spiritual matters. So I was much more psychologically oriented. So I sit down in this little truck and I heard this booming, deep man's voice say, "A pregnant woman sits here." It was so loud. I'd never heard anything like it. So I thought, okay, either I'm having some kind of psychotic break, which there was no warning for, by the way, or I just had some kind of psychic experience and I need to find out which happened. So I started talking to this poor man about babies, 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 babies. And finally he cracked and he said, "My girlfriend is 3 months pregnant. We just told her family last night. We're just starting to tell people today." So, all right, we'd established that I hadn't had a psychic break, but what did happen? And that led to, over time, an inquiry. I didn't hear that voice again for about a year, went on living my life.
But you thought it was pretty odd, right? You never forgot it. It's like, what was that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it shuttled me right into amazing possibilities. And I remember at the time being so relieved that I didn't have a psychotic break. that I wasn't too worried about being psychic. Because this was a long time ago, but we'd all heard of these things. So I went on and I lived my life, and I did hear that voice again. It was kind of like a warning shot. It did foretell things that were to come, but I had no idea. I moved to New York, lived there for a number of years, and a few years into living in New York and working in the art world, knowing where I was going, by the way, I started having these incredible mystical experiences that I don't talk about very often, actually. I had incredible visions, like all the time.
Did something precipitate that in New York that brought these visions on? Were you?
No.
No, were you in your apartment or on the street, or where were you? I'm just curious, particularly.
Well, it started happening frequently.
Yeah.
And
everywhere. Okay.
Everywhere. I mean, I was on the bus one night going home on Park Avenue, and I started having this mystical vision, which it was happening in the night stars. I couldn't really figure out until I realized that it was an experience of the mystic marriage, kind of East Indian style, not in the Catholic tradition. So I was having experiences that I didn't know anything about. Right. I didn't know about the mystic marriage. I would sort of research these things later. I was having experiences with what we'll call archangels. I don't know, but I didn't know their names. I would look them up later and think, my God, that was an archangel. And I think what you're speaking to is that, for me, I'll just say, it was amazing. I spent a great deal of time in ecstasy for about a year. However, it was also disorienting. And ultimately, I ended up quitting my job, moving back to California. And just to be honest about this, feeling quite resentful that my entire life had changed when it was headed in a direction that I really loved. I was intellectually happy. I was, etc.
You were in the art world, building a kind of art curating career. And really excited about that, and
loved it.
And then, what year was that this mystical experience started to unfold? When was
it? Was a long time ago. Let's say like 1998.
Oh, okay.
So the spiritual community was much smaller then. I didn't know anybody in the spiritual world. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that. I've never been so lonely in my life. And this speaks to people that you have spoken to who have had experiences with aliens. In my world, I was having an alien experience compared to my friends, my family. And I really was left with finding my own way. I didn't know there was a spiritual community. Even when I moved back to Southern California, I didn't really meet people. So I was left trying to figure things out on my own, which is, I'm sure, what happens to people that you interview.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a Kundalini awakening, like Stangraf, spontaneous spiritual emergence, they call it now. That sounds like what happened to you, a real emergence. And it didn't really come from anywhere. Some people have near-death experience. Some people have these healing, but it just sort of happened to you, which is so interesting, from out of nowhere, right? I mean, that's even more dramatic.
It was a little dramatic, I'm just gonna say.
So that was.
But I was incredibly curious also. And at the same time that I was, I didn't resist. I resented, but I didn't resist. And I learned everything I could on my own, experimenting, etc. I became an energy worker and a psychic reader. I went really with information that I got from elsewhere. I felt like I was being trained from elsewhere. Now, who knows how that's actually happening, right? I mean, Henrietta knows that I'm always asking questions about the brain, how the brain is involved.
Well, it sounds like the masters were working with you, like kind of coming to you for maybe some past life agreement. Who knows? What were you going to say, Henrietta? You said something?
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, what I'm going to say in relation to Marla talking about the brain is that she and I, in our last conversation, we're both talking about our, interesting, extraordinary experiences. Whether for me, it's like I'm getting more information in my dreams that seems to come true, or remote viewing. I was telling her a story about that. So we were comparing our experiences, and then we were both saying, but we really want to know what's happening in our brains when the experiences are happening. We want to know more about the science.
It is a brain thing. I just want to show, like in my book, not to do too much of a commercial here, but in my book, Darryl Anka, who's a channel, talks about the gamma waves in his chapter in this book, and how when he's channeling, his brain is much more in gamma than it is in beta or alpha. So there is brainwave states that bring on the higher mystical experiences. They are related. Right, Nadi, what do you know about that? You know about that too, right, Nadi?
Yeah, my coverage is so bad.
Oh, it's okay. I hear you.
I practiced. I had a very similar experience. Well, similar, not similar, but I had a year of mystical, awakening and connecting with other guidance, and I basically checked out of my life. You sounds like you were resentful. I was blissed out to be connecting with these beings. Mm-hmm. One in particular, I was having a very psychic romance, and so I was dedicated hours every day to creating that brainwave state and accessing a gamma where I could travel and have a good time.
Wow.
I loved it too. I agree. I just didn't want my whole life to change. That's all.
Right. Yeah, you didn't want your whole life to change.
And this happens for a lot of people, right? Once they reach levels of awakening, it does happen.
Well, some people want their lives to change also, which brings on a spiritual awakening. So, but go on with your story a little bit, because you didn't have to leave the art world totally, or was this force just so present in your life that
I had to leave it?
And
I was told that I needed to move back to Southern California. And I'm very happy here. I grew up here. It's all good. But, I thought, well, there are more charming places I could move to, aren't there? But I did it. I felt like there was hands pressing my back towards California. I did it. I got a little office. I started doing energy work and the psychic reading. But, one thing that I really want to talk about, and this goes a little bit back to the brain, but just before we started this video, we talked a little bit about anxiety of these kinds of experiences, whether it's your field, Alan, or whether it's my field, which of course is all the same field. But right. One thing I began to notice, because I started teaching early on, I noticed that the students kind of fell into two categories of anxiety, and they had a lot of it. One,
So go ahead about the anxiety.
Well, I'm only saying this because it relates, I think, to so much of what you've written about and talked about.
Yeah.
So, first of all, we talked about that in my own little life, the disorientation. But what I saw in my students is that they were either two categories: one, overwhelmed, or two, felt blocked and doubtful. So the overwhelmed ones were having experiences like you talked about, Nadia, and about my life. They knew something was happening. There was no question. They didn't know how to control it, maybe. They were students. They were just learning. The experiences happen abruptly, maybe in inappropriate places, they thought, like at work. But the ones who I became really fascinated with, and am finishing a book for both those camps. But The ones who are so blocked, so they think. The ones who want to be psychic so badly, but feel they can't. The ones who are having psychic experiences, which they all are, but think they're not doing it right.
Uh-huh.
And so this is an area that I really want to address, because I see that when people, I don't know, I listed 10 psychic senses. I'm not going to go on and on.
No, I'm interested in this work. Absolutely. I think it's...
I could have listed 5 psychic senses or 20. I mean, we have a lot of them, but I'm stuck with 10. And because involving the brain and whatever that information is that we're connecting out there and in here, we all do it very differently. So when I mentioned the 2 camps, the seers and the hearers, they're having particular experiences that often feel very external. But the knowers and the feelers and the sensors, the people who are feeling emotions and things in their bodies, are the ones who, I mean, it's extremely difficult to interpret whether you're having a psychic emotional reaction or getting psychic information, or you're having your own emotional experience. So I'm actually fascinated to know how what I'm saying relates, Alan, to the experience you have with experiencers.
Well, it does fit into those 2 camps, and maybe Henrietta, or even I'm not sure about her ET experiences, but these beings, when they've come to me, have been mostly dreams, and the dream is such an interior aspect of one's mind, because so you don't think the dream. But I've been doing a lot of dream work lately, and also noticing as I'm falling to sleep that there's stuff coming in that is not part of my inner psychology. So it's like the dream state is this inner and outer doorway. Everyone thinks dreams are just coming from one's own mind, but they're not. Obvious. This is what the Aborigines told me when I went to live with them in Australia for just a couple of weeks. They talked to me about dream time is their religion. And it's that state where you are watching yourself fall asleep and you start to see the images coming from something that's not being generated by your mind. They're just pouring in. Maybe that's right brain. It's the same part of the brain that remote views. And so there's this internal, and then in that same line about the alien experiences, there's these beings appeared to me in that altered state, these dreamlike states. So they seem to be external, but they're also, so is there even an out there? Is there even an external?
I wonder that too.
Exactly. I mean, you appear to be there, but maybe you're also a manifestation of the bigger dream, right, Henrietta? Nadi, these are, right? I mean, what's that Edgar Allan Poe quote about a dream is what it seems? You know, that famous. Anyway, it's all.
Think of it, but it's good.
I'll find it, but it's, so I think what you're saying is what the cutting edge of like ET exploration is now about. It's not about visitors out there. I mean, in a way it is, but it's also about us awakening to a bigger realm of consciousness. This is what my book, Making Contact, goes deeper into that field of study. It's like, there's no out there, but there's, is there, what are we? You know, who was that voice, Marla? Oh, there you go. Thank you, Nani. Who?
That's an interesting point, Alan. Like, what was that voice?
Yeah, what was that voice? Because I have to say, you know, I got into this whole thing by going to channels. Like, I saw Jay-Z Night Ramtha in 1981. And Ramtha's big message was, the mystery is not in this woman who's channeling. The bigger mystery is in who is you. What's coming through that body? What are you channeling as your personality and soul essence every minute? And that was like, yeah, that is the bigger question here. And then I opened the door into this whole other mystical realm, and having, once you open that door, you can't, it shuts behind you, and you are in that world. There's no going back to, you can't not see or experience whatever, right? So, but who was that voice? Did you ever find out? Are you like channeling something, Marla? Or, I mean, what was the voice?
Well, I have that question too. Oh my goodness. Can I tell you one more story?
Sure.
I've told people a pregnant woman.
Tell us.
Year, but I don't think I've ever told this story in a public venue. When I was 17 years old and had just graduated from high school, I was, of course, talking on the phone like I did all day long with my girlfriends. So on a phone call, and all of a sudden, I saw in her vision, first time, a door open in front of me. And beyond that door were like roiling seas. This was not like a peaceful green pasture. This was energy moving all over the place. And I thought I could go through that door if I wanted to.
Wait, I missed something. How did the door manifest itself? How did it?
Just as a little vision.
Right, just as a vision.
Inner mind, very strong, feeling like it was in front of me.
Okay.
And I knew that door was an invitation. I knew that I could go through that door in that moment. I could make the choice. But I had the feeling, and this was actually a very mature decision, I think, for a 17-year-old. I thought, I don't have what it takes to navigate that world. It looked extremely unsettled. The colors were orange, red, yellow, a lot of, as I said, roiling seas. And I thought, I am not ready for that. And I shut the door.
Wow.
And then had that experience, many years later at 38 years old. So there was an invitation at some point from within, or who knows.
But was it an invitation or foreshadowing, like a seed being planted of a reality that now you're swimming in, I mean, just to kind of give you a glimpse. And yeah, maybe you could have went through that, or maybe it was just there for that moment to plant the seed of this bigger reality. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that I think a lot of people have these types of experiences. I mean, but they do just kind of, it's very easy, especially when you're that age, to just push them aside and carry on, right? And then in Marle's experience, it comes on a full blast when you're in your 30s, which is almost double double 17. So kind of like, I mean, in my experience and so many other people's I've spoken to, they have these little kind of hints and whispers, invitations, but you don't accept because it's scary. You don't know. And then, if something is so overwhelming, like your experience, and you were resentful, it's because you can't ignore it. I've heard so many people say that, like Alan, who was it? The guest, our very first guest, Peter. What's his name?
Was it Peter? Who was our first guest? I don't.
Guy living in New York, upstate New York. He has a radio show, but he was saying about the visitors.
Oh, Peter Robbins. Yes.
But he was kind of saying, look, it's not that I'm kind of loving this. A lot of people go like, oh, it's so amazing. But he was kind of going, it's like I have no choice, but then once you're on board, yes, it is wonderful and it's a wild ride and it's extraordinary. It's not like the choice he was wanting to make. He was actually in the music world and the art world too. And I personally kind of have the same thing, in that I feel like there are all these things I want to do, but I keep getting kind of pulled to more towards this and what we're exploring here. It becomes louder, you know, like a loud.
But I think this is so important, Henrietta, because we need to create a culture that is more comfortable with not only these experiences, but also the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm a big questioner, and nobody in my field likes my questions.
What are your questions? Tell us, Marla. What are those questions? We love the questions.
Oh, thank God. Well, this is why Henrietta told me that I had to meet you, Alan.
Oh, thanks. And Nadi's very open to it. She's a student of this. So we're all, and everyone listening online wants to know, what are those questions you're talking about?
You know, one of my friends said to me, we're so infantile, really, our culture, that we don't even know the right questions to ask. We're not even at that point yet, which I think is true. But I'll just go back to my original thing. I think what you're doing is so important. We need to ask these questions. We need to gather data. We need to gather information, even if it's anecdotal. We're not at the place where we're doing much scientific research about these kinds, this phenomenon. And also, I think, you know, as it becomes more prevalent in our culture, people like me wouldn't have had to struggle. I'm not saying my life was so terrible, but, you know, I know
it is a struggle when this reality shows up that no one told you about. It's like, how come no one told me about this?
And I see this in so many of my students, not the ones who are in their 20s and early 30s, that, you know, they've been exposed to it. But once we get to about age 40 and above, you know, there are people who are having these experiences as a child with no one to turn to. So I love what you're doing. Just keep going. You're moving.
There's no place else to go, right? I mean,
you're right.
I mean, you can't go back. You can't, you know, right, Nadi? You've had those experiences. Were you going to say something, Nadi, before? What were you?
No, I was just enjoying that. Let me turn my video off for a second.
Oh,
otherwise, it's really, I've just freeze so much. I'm really relating. I'm enjoying the conversation so much. And, you know, once it was hard to be the pioneers. You know, you all really led the way for there to be a conversation for other people, and to normalize it and to validate it. And I think that's just an extraordinary role to play. And I always want to give props to that experience. That's not an easy place. As you said, there was no community back then, you know, even in the 90s. I mean, you know, in Ramtha, and I mean, that was one of the early, and they really, there was such little support. And I'll just jump in with my experience so that I'm on the same page, is that,
yes.
I was, what am I now? So I was 45 when I had an encounter with both a human. I had the encounter with the human, but he's also has timeless and interdimensional. And so I have a relationship with him on those realms. And it was like a wonderful carrot on a stick, because I was so motivated to learn the psychic realms. And I was thinking, as you were talking about how people, you know, learning it, it's like learning foreign languages. You like telepathy. It's the most fascinating thing to learn. And I have absolute mind link with this human. And I couldn't tell what was my mind, what was his mind. I couldn't tell, you know, I work with the Mantids and the Arcturians, and it's really tricky to decipher, like, is that just me making this up? No, this is a transmission that's happening in our subconscious, in the psychic ways that we access other dimensions, other civilizations. And so I was really just relating to the learning curve. It's really profound, and you really want to have guides and guardians and people who've gone ahead of you. So I'm so grateful for those of us who are putting it out there, you know?
Right. I also want to say about that crop circle. Show that crop circle again that you just showed. I was using, before I met Nadi years ago, I was using that as my logo, which is sort of a what they call
That's
it, right?
yeah.
And a
Oh,
Penrose triangle. Oh, and did you tell Marla what you used to see around me, Henrietta, when when you first met?
Yeah, no, I
tell
didn't.
me.
Tell her.
It's in Marla, because this is what Alan and I were obviously talking about, many things in the psychic and spiritual realms, and just also having a good laugh. But I wasn't looking at UFO phenomenon at all. At all.
So you
Even though
never even you never considered it as a reality, in other words, right?
well, I just thought it was a bit of a goofy thing, even though I'd seen them when I was a teenager. So
Right.
I'd done
Oh,
pushing them. I'd just literally gone like that was them, and now I'm carrying on with my life. But when Alan and I were talking this summer, it was a summer for me of a lot of quite mystical experiences, very interesting, sort of anomalous stuff happening that I couldn't have no idea what it was, but there were many of them. But I would be sitting talking to Alan, having intense conversations, and I'd see these like triangles appear over his head, but not see like clearly, but just these images in my mind of triangles above his head. And it happened a couple of times. And I'd stop him and go, Alan, you've got triangles.
I
But
wouldn't
sort of-
see them, but you were tuning into something there. So yeah, and then eventually
yeah.
you said, I said, well, you don't have to tell the whole story, but I said, the UFO question that just lit a light bulb in your mind, right, Henrietta?
Yeah, Alan just said, of course, the most important thing, or one of the most important things for us to be looking at in terms of our evolution of consciousness is the UFO abduction phenomenon. And I just thought, what's he talking about? Like Alan talks about so many things. Pick one out as the most important one. And so anyway, then that sort of, I dived into it in a deep way. No, I didn't dive in, I fell in.
Right.
You're describing, as soon as I read this one book, Whitley Strieber's Communion, and it felt like a world that I knew. But it also triggered all these memories. I couldn't define whether they were memories, dreams, my imagination, of which I know I've got a strong one, but it felt like it was a very different quality. It wasn't like me making up stories. It was like I really knew what he was talking about.
And she has a chapter in my book, Nadi, did you read Henrietta's chapter? I think it's chapter 9. That in there, but
yet.
Anyway, I thought it was such a dramatic awakening, sort of like what we're talking about, though, Marla and all of us here, is this bigger reality that we've been kept from. And so the latest trend in UFO studies is that these are not necessarily beings from another realm, but they're dimensional. This is where the whole field is sort of shifting to this. They're not visitors just visiting, checking us out. There might be something, but it's a frequency that seems to be coming through because somehow the veils between these dimensions, which I'm sure is getting much thinner. And so can you talk about that, Marla, what you're seeing with your kind of psychic vision of this kind of dimensional shift we're in? Do you get messages like that?
I don't know if I have a specific message for you, but of course I have thoughts, Alan.
Well, tell us your thoughts. Who cares about messages?
Well, I think, we're funny, we humans. We love to constrict things and make them manageable. We have, old-fashioned labels that we're using for experiences that we can hardly describe, much less categorize. And so I do look forward to a time when we can embrace more of this for everybody, but we do have to develop language, which we don't have. Yes. I mean, we have a few spiritual words, and that has to suffice, I guess, for now. I look forward to that. I look forward to better technology, better research, more science. I do always get that our technology is going to be making a huge leap forward in the next 5 years, and that a lot of things we've seen in the movies, for example, with advanced technology will be happening. So there's a lot in the future that I look forward to. I feel like we're stumbling around kind of and bumping into things. Well, I have a question for you, Alan.
Sure.
So if that's the trend now in your field, what do you personally think about an alien experience versus what a spiritual person might call an interdimensional experience or another dimension?
I think they're the same in a sense, because these, if you call them aliens, are actually, this is my theory, come in this world, but they're not of this world. They're not, this world, this earth is vibrating at a particular frequency. We're all can interact with each other. But if you go to another planet, even those beings are not vibrating the same, and they're not dimensionalized. I just made that word up, but dimensionalized in the same way we are. And so I think there is in a way no difference, but there is a physicality nevertheless to these beings, because some of them are extracting our genetics, which, and our, sperm, egg, all that, because I think there's actually an interdimensional quality to the cellular structure. So what we think is our physical body and whatever lineages that holds is not as physical. It's physical, but there's more to it than just that. There's other elements, that maybe 12-strand DNA, I don't know what that is, but there's more to this. There's more to us, but we've been so, in a way, dumbed down to think, oh, this is it. But, if we knew we could disappear from this realm into another, we could be just as interdimensional. I think we are in our dreams. And yeah. Also, not you. Go ahead, Henrietta. Yes, what were you saying?
I definitely think we've had so many conversations about this, but for me personally, I just feel much more comfortable in these times now that the conversation is opening up, because ever since as a child, I just knew that we were one tiny part of something much larger, which wasn't necessarily seen.
Yes.
Physical matter, but there was just this sense that there was so much more to it in terms of other beings, other intelligences, other ways of knowing, other ways of being, and so what the interesting thing to me is that so many, more people are kind of having this sense of seeing things. Right?
Yeah.
Because, why couldn't it just be in your dreaming? So, for instance, for me, I have some extraordinary dreams, but then I started that summer, and I haven't had any since. But, I had, as Marle said, I had a specific, a vision of which I've never had anything like it before. One evening, stone cold sober, sort of with the light on in the apartment, of a Native American Indian running towards me, and I knew him, and I knew that he was the greatest love of my life, in that it was a love like I'd never felt, and then and then it was over, and I was literally like, what was that? Because it wasn't an imagination, it wasn't a dream, and I was completely present and aware. And so it's like something kind of slips in, things keep sort of slipping in between the cracks. And then the other day I was talking to someone about dark matter and how you know, we're only kind of equipped in these bodies to see, I think it's like 30% of the actual physical world. Like the rest of it, we're not seeing, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like when we develop that awareness that we actually know very little about ourselves and the whole thing that we're embedded in, then all these experiences that Marle speaks of, or frame it in the UFO abduction, Nadi's experiences, none of it is that weird at all. It's like, once we get over the kind of weirdness, we can, I like the idea of us all being able to explore that as thoroughly as we've thought about, like, what career am I going to have, or, you know, where do I want to live? You know, those things that have so much weight in our lives so far, like to be really kind of intrepid explorers of the unknown would be fantastic if there were so many much more people.
But that is what we're here to do, to be explorers of the unknown. That is that's why we incarnated. I think that's exactly my adventure.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But now that more of us are doing it and we're connecting up in a much more accelerated way, and each person has their part of the puzzle, like Nadi with her study of crop circles, Marle with her work, you know, us with ours. It's like the more we come together and share very honestly about these kind of experiences, then well, I mean, I'm also excited, like Marle, to look at the new science that kind of is alongside the mystical experiences or the ineffable experiences that you know, so many of us are having.
Because you know, there's always going to be a mystery there. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, just I was going to say that maybe it's an interesting, like Marle said about language, and we've talked a lot about that, Alan. This new language that we can formulate. One of the things will be this new attitude of like, well, the strange isn't strange. You know, the mystical isn't mystical. It's natural. It's
normal. It's super natural.
Supernatural, exactly.
Yeah. But I just wanted to add, Nadi's been studying this with a really great teacher for like the past year or something. Do you want to talk about that? And I just talk about it, Nadi. I just have to get my charger. I'll be right back. But go ahead.
Yeah. If I turn my screen off, you all can hear me well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think Alan is referring to this guide and this exactly, Henrietta, what you had said. It is a love beyond what any earthly love, and it has. But we made an agreement with each other, and he has taught me. He has reawakened my abilities to navigate all of the dimensional realms. He has helped me go back to my ships and claim my role as a high-level commander of an armada. You know, I can go to other galaxies and have reconnected with different aspects of myself. You know, and so I've really, you know, begun to normalize things that I never would have even considered before. And I like to really encourage people to ditch the word crazy or weird and substitute the word extraordinary, because it's a perfect swap, and it up levels, and it does exactly what you're talking about, which is to like, no, this stuff is amazing, and it's part of who we are, and it's right here and accessible. And the other thing I wanted to say as you were talking is when you were saying, you know, it's so great how we're talking about these things, and we are creating a more open narrative. And one of the things that Marie Rodwell and a lot of people talk about is the science of DNA and the activation, you know, this encoding that is available to us when we start to share certain frequencies. When we start to uplift each other, we are activating these multidimensional aspects of our DNA, and we are opening each other. And it's crop circles, it's art, it's the star kids. There's so many different ways that we really are beginning to open to the fullness of who we are, this conversation, all of our psychic abilities. you know, anyway, I got really excited as you were talking, and, you know, I never would have thought that journeying to other galactic realms, or, you know, speaking regularly with the mantids, or, you know, Alan, you were talking about the interdimensionals, you know, and by the way, as you were talking, it's very clear that you have some beings behind you. I can see
really?
them. They're behind all of us, but very much so behind you.
Well,
and there's, you know, and so you were talking, you know, some of them do have physical form, but those are the denser beings. And I don't actually move too much with those folks. I move in the realms of, I work a lot with the Arcturians, who they are dimensional beings that don't take physical form. They vibrate at higher rates. And so there is this adjustment from, like, you know, the Zetas and those who move in the physical realm, and broadening the conversation to other dimensional beings. And I'm talking a lot, but I get so excited.
no,
But
no,
just
it's
opening
right.
to the possibilities.
But you brought up some good points, because you answer your question, Mahler. I was thinking about it. What is the difference between ETs, let's say, and interdimensional beings? There is a difference. I mean, in a way there isn't, but in a way, and these are just names we give different. I mean, who knows if they're Arcturians or, but what is different is that there's the astral realm, which is very human-like, because they're beings that may have passed over, or even guardians that have been here for decades, that are all part of a very earth-centered human sphere. And what is different about the ETs, in my opinion, is that it's a whole different frequency. It's something, that's why most psychics don't tune into it, because they're very tuned into human type of dimensional mind frequencies. And that's a huge scope. And yet there's this other vibratory realm to other beings that most people can't relate to, because their vibration is so different. This is my theory, their frequency of consciousness, whether physical or not physical, it's like trying to pick up Wi-Fi on your radio. It's like you just don't get the frequency, because it's nothing we've been used to, in a sense, as a race of beings, whether even astrally, it's a vibrational frequency that's so different. Does that make sense then? So to tune into these other beings means you have to sort of almost separate from that. I'm calling, like, the psychic realm, the astral realm, whatever you call that, and realize you can tune your, you know, hardware, your mechanism, your brain to these other places that are barely perceptible in the old ways of thinking, even as a psychic. So it's like psychics don't pick them up.
I totally embrace this.
Right. So if you could fine tune your frequency to this other sort of realm, it's like looking at abstract painting and trying to figure out what it looks like. It's like, you know, it's a whole different thing to go from representational art to abstract art, and appreciate the abstractness of it. When people say that is just, I don't understand. And it's that frequency shift. So I wonder what makes, I mean, so do you tap into, have you tapped into anything like that? Or is that Marle? Or is that like something that may have appeared on your radar and you maybe ignored it? I don't know. Or,
well, a couple things come to mind. One is, yet again, a story I've told no one.
Okay, I appreciate that. We're all good friends. All thousands of us that are listening online and everywhere, we're all your good friends.
All good friends.
Yeah.
So I had a very close relationship with a man who I realized, and this is not everybody, whose chest was a portal. Now, I didn't know what to do with that information.
His chest was a portal, you said? His chest?
Yeah, his chest. It was like it was a tunnel.
Wow.
Yeah. incredible being. And very spiritual, but also busy living life.
Right.
Yeah.
And he knew there was something special about him and his heart, but so anyway, I was completely shocked to think that. Now, again, I'm using our human language.
Right.
Yeah.
What else do I have? So what I felt like is his chest was a portal to the night sky. So,
Wow.
or the universes beyond. So one day he said to me, well, why don't you go through there? And I said, no, I don't want to,
Oh,
because
you
I'm
mean you
total
actually said this to him? It wasn't something you just
Yeah.
noticed on your own. You said, guess what, guy? You know, you have a portal in the middle of your chest.
Yeah. And
Okay.
he said, he was like, okay. So he said, why don't you go through there? And I said, I don't want to, because I don't know what's on the other side. I was kind of worried that I would lose traction or I
Yeah.
would lose connection. But eventually, of course, I did. And this is such a sweet little story. So
Tell
I
us.
didn't go very far in because I'm not a big explorer. I'm a better cataloger than I am explorer. So I thought I'm just going to go to whatever is right next door. I went out the portal right next door. I'm not going any further. So I went to
How did you get into the portal? How did you jump into the
I
middle
don't
of
know.
this?
I just thought myself through it. I
Okay.
thought and felt myself through it and poked out on the other side. All right. So I went to this little land. It was a happy place. It had atmosphere and it had these little creatures. Now, God knows what they really look like, because we know that our brain has to interpret things
Right.
and make a story, not a story, but put it into a realm that we can understand. So, okay, so there are these little beings and they all look like white little flowers. That's the closest that I could get. And I was much bigger than they were, but I wasn't worried. Well, I wasn't worried because they felt so sweet and friendly and kind of embracing. And I knew they couldn't see me. So I wasn't worried, right? I thought, well, just pop back through that portal. Everything will be fine. Well, as I was leaving, they said, where are you going? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, don't you want to tell us where you're from and speak to us and share?
Wow.
And I was like, no, I don't. And I ran back in through the portal. This is who we're dealing with here. This is how brave I am. But then I thought, okay, that was incredibly rude and unkind. So I went back through the portal and returned and stood up bravely and told them where I came from and that I was very grateful to be there, etc. Now, yeah.
That
It's a sweet little story, though, isn't it? And they were all very nice.
But did they tell you about their world? Like, where is it? Can you get back there? Can we go with you? I don't know if I want to, but can we?
It's a sweet little innocent place. Well, I'm sure I can. You know what? Once you've mapped out a part of the energy realm,
Right.
you can return there. I went to a place once. I hope this won't bore you.
No, this is fascinating.
I went to a place where it's such a great story, and I want to tell you the whole thing, but I'm just...
Tell us whatever you want. I mean, we have time. We have all night. Whatever you want. We're here.
All right.
We're here with you.
This is an incredible story. And the reason I'm telling you is because it is about interdimensional travel, as was the last story. But kind of in the realm that you were saying, Alan, it's still close to home. That's how it feels, right? I mean, you can dial the dial anywhere, but okay, so here's what happened. So I had this client and her son had committed suicide, which sounds very sad, but it turned out to be so beautiful. So she wanted to know where he was. This is a big concern for people. Do their loved ones make it to the other side? Are they okay? Are they cared for? Wow, that's an understatement. So his name was Ronnie. And I said, okay, well, now usually what happens, I do a lot of medium readings. I really like them because I want to know what everybody's doing over there. I want to know how they spend their time. I want to know if they're advancing. I want to know everything. But usually what happens in a medium reading is it feels like they come to the border between our lives. I go to the border. We have a great conversation. You know, they can show me things. I can show them things, but it's not going there. I don't feel like I'm going there. Well, with Ronnie, so I go to the border. There's nobody there. Usually they're there already. It only takes the thought, right, for us to get anywhere. So I waited, no Ronnie. So then I was like, does anybody know Ronnie? I mean, they know the Ronnie I'm talking about, right? Because I'm connected to his mother. So whatever I send out is like, this is the Ronnie I want, not just any Ronnie.
It sounds like that movie Soul. Did you see that movie Soul? The Pixar movie? You got to see it. It's about that realm. It's just fantastic.
Actually, I'll watch it. So finally, 3 like teenagers, I'll call them, appeared and said, we'll take you there. I was like, oh, well, I'm used to staying here. I don't usually go there. Well, I followed them, and I never have had to work so hard energetically in my entire life. I mean, I was like, oh, I was just trying to think myself up, 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 up. And finally, we arrived at this place. Because I am very visual psychically, I describe things visually. That doesn't mean, I just want to reiterate that everybody who's psychic sees things, because we know that's not true. Okay, so I get there, and it was like this big light blue bubble, kind of like a balloon in a way. And so I said, well, where's Ronnie? And they said, well, he's right in there. So I look in, and I see this young man sitting like a monk, dressed in a robe. There's so much about this story. I hardly know where to begin. We're not going to take all night. So
it's okay. It's fascinating because I don't usually talk to people who have these adventures in other realities. It's really fascinating. So
you're so kind to say that. So
well, it's not saying because I'm being kind. I'm saying because it's fascinating.
Okay, so that was the first time I went. Now I was able to get information through the bubble. So I was able to tell his mother that, yes, he committed suicide because he was mentally ill. She knew that already. Yes. However, in his mind, it was a blip. Just a blip. And the reason he said that he came to this earthly life, and this is incredible, was to give a message to one of his college teachers. This is why he came.
Wow, what was the message?
I don't know. That I didn't get. I should have asked. But in the meantime, I'm like working so hard to stay up there.
That is fantastic. That is so... You are an adventurer of consciousness. You really are. And
yeah.
You could go to, bet you could go with a little coaching or guide or just suggestion. You could go to these ET realms and find out what they're here to tell us, because they are coming closer. I think this is, do you feel that too? Well, I know. Marle, do you feel something also like there's, or maybe you're not tuned into that, like these other non-human frequencies are piercing the veil or coming closer to our realm, or maybe we're becoming more multidimensional, or, I mean, what are you feeling psychically about that?
Well, I don't know. Okay, can I finish the story about Ronnie?
Sorry, I thought your story finished.
I know. I do have an answer for you about that, but
Finish the story because I thought it was like the message to the college teacher was the...
Well, that's incredible enough, isn't it?
No, but finish the story. Yes.
That you would go through a whole life, you would go through the whole process of being born and being raised and being and struggling through mental illness just to give a message to somebody who needed it. Love that. Anyway, okay, so then I did tell, I have told this story before. I told one of my friends and he said, well, can you go back there? And I was like, I don't know. It was so hard. I don't think I could. And he said, well, just try it. And
what's hard when you say something's hard? What is the hardness? What's difficult about, like, is it just maintaining a focus? What can describe that difficult?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, because usually maybe when I was learning and training, things were hard, but my work is not hard. This, I think, because he was so elevated and that I am not as elevated, that I had to think myself up there and I had to maintain that focus. So, you know, we do think in our spiritual world and others, you know, that higher is better, higher is more evolved, higher is whatever, lower is. So that's how it felt to me, that I had to think really hard to get there. And then I had to maintain that focus. So it could have been any kind of focus that was hard. It just so happened that was. I'll finish about Ronnie because it's a very beautiful story. So now that we know that it was a blip, he had a message for his mother that she was the mother of a simple monk. I thought, oh yeah, just a simple monk that evolved. And he showed me that, well, I asked the 3 teenagers where I was. And they said, oh, you're in the land of love. And of course, there are many lands of love. This is just a label we know. And the second time, with my friend's encouragement, I was able to go inside the bubble. And the monk, Ronnie, showed me that in his world, love was entirely stable. And this is important, that the love that he gave out was received and given back by the boundaries of his world. So it was a completely stable energy. And I think that's important because I think as humans, we do not think of love as being stable. We associate it with feelings and actions. We're always worried about equality, love, back and forth. And now he'd worked to get there. I'm not saying that I could do what he did. But that was really interesting. And in his spare time, he dropped little love notes to human beings on Earth. And if someone was open and his love came fluttering down, it would they would receive it and feel it.
I mean, that is another concept where love is stable. I mean, that is a very interesting concept or reality. I mean, because it feels so fleeting here. It's like, oh yeah, love that. It's gone. You know, but I think where it's stable, I mean, because in essence, that is what's behind everything, right? So it is stable here. It's just not very apparent that it is. I mean, so
that's an important thing, I think, for us to take forward from tonight, that love can be a stable force in the universe.
I think it is
something we can always work towards.
It is, right? It is, Henrietta, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel it is. I've never doubted that it isn't in my life.
Oh.
No. I feel, yeah, I think that that's what is. And then, you know, behavior choices are something different, but the force of love itself is continually stable, is my personal sense.
I love that. How did you get to that place? You were always there?
Always, yeah.
She was a monk in that previous lifetime with Ronnie.
Ronnie.
But that other question I asked about
ask me again.
No, so what I was saying, also what Nadi, I think, tunes into when she talks about Arcturians are the frequencies that are not necessarily even of that realm, even of the, I mean, of course it's love, but it's something else. It's a whole other sense of beingness and consciousness. And it exists somehow, maybe its own version of love, whatever, but it's not what we understand as human frequency. And I was just wondering if you can tap into that, or have to ever tap, or can now, and see what you're picking up. You can call it Arcturian, Pleiadian, Siri. I don't know. There's lots of names. I don't know what they even mean. They're all different, but there are beings that exist, obviously, beyond this earth plane. I wonder if they can talk to you, or have talked to you, or can, or will, or shall, or might. And if you get anything about not just talking to you, but what this major time in our history, this transformation of modalities of thought, let's put it that way, because it is a modality.
So well put.
Yes, I got that from Castaneda, but yes, it is. But it's a
well, it was a good one.
Yes, it's a frequency of vibration. I think the vibration is shifting somehow. That's why we're all having this conversation on Zoom, and the whole COVID thing and everything that's taken place. It's all shifted us to this other level. So what are you picking up anything extra dimensional, or ET, or if it,
I'll tell you, I'm not going to give you a very interesting answer. Honestly.
That's okay.
So I'll make it short, but I think that, as you said earlier, and really you've all said it, Nadi too, when you were talking about being the commander of a fleet. I mean, what I think is happening out there, everything is energy. We know this already. The desk I'm sitting at is energy. We know this. We're energetic beings. It's not that hard, really, with a little practice, to communicate with anything. I mean, I can get a message from this desk right now if I want to, right? Or the bird, or the, right? So I think that all of this is existing out there. And really the only limitation, I hate to sound cliche, is that which we can't think of, and our language for it too. I mean, everything that we've mentioned tonight is there at some level.
Right. But that's where I want you to go. I want you to bring in, just me, the language we have yet to name, the concepts we have yet to know, because what I think is happening is we are being upgraded into the unknown, where there isn't the language, there isn't the concretized concepts, and it's much more abstract and variable or something. I mean, there's something else that we're starting to tap into, and maybe it's bringing us back to who we always were, but it's not concrete. It's not a collapse of the wave function, as I call it. It's living in the abstract. It's living in this sort of more, I call it apprehension versus comprehension. So it's this, that's my, people think apprehension is something to be feared. No, it's just something that is more big than the comprehension, which is saying, oh, this is what it is. This is what it is. No, that's collapsing a wave function. But when it's much more fluid, which is where I think these, let's say, ETs live, it's bringing us up to that level. It's like symbolic level, as opposed to the difference between a sign and a symbol is like, a sign means this, a symbol doesn't quite mean anything, but it means something specific. So that's the realm I feel consciousness is expanding into.
Right.
And so that's a frequency that's unlike, I think, any other that humans have been experienced. I mean, maybe the Aborigines know, or the Native Americans, or they think in those ways, but the Western mind is very concretized into form and meaning. What were you going to say, Henrietta? Were you going to say something about that? Because
well, the Western mind is is that way because we've been sort of trained that way for a long, long time. But our actual mind in its pure state is, of course, infinitely flexible and with many possibilities of, right? Of just kind of what, you know, Marle's why I was very interested in Marle as a psychic is because she's a classic example of a human that was very much in that kind of Western rational mind that wasn't even exploring spiritual realms. And then these things, you know, like that voice coming out of nowhere that is very specifically accurate, you know, it had no choice but to go, well, actually, everything I thought before there's a whole different, this is a whole different ball game. So I think that, you know, all of us, that's all of our minds, all of our beings, whatever narrative we put to it is a different story.
Right.
Obviously.
Can you tune into the ETs that are around me and Henrietta and Nadi? We're all, I get the sense, have maybe more connected to those beings than maybe the average person on the street. But do you know what I'm getting at, Marle? Do you sense that?
I do. Well, I have a very simple answer for you.
Okay.
You're friendly.
Yeah.
That's a psychic answer I get. I mean, you're friendly.
I'm friendly. We're friendly.
You're
But
friendly to
what
them.
about them? They friend? I mean, what's their, not that they're not friendly, but what are you getting if you tune into them in a way separate from me? I don't want to push you into anything.
There's so many. There's so many, and the you know, it's a
no, but tell us what you
universe
think.
possibility, right?
No, but
So
when you say, yeah, when you say
there's where to start.
But when you say there's so many, what are you sensing about that?
I feel like there's just a panoply of, you know, it's like everything. I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's everything. I mean, but that is the answer that I get for you. If you weren't friendly,
right?
Which I think is another word for open, right?
Right.
Or, but friendly is the word they keep saying. You're friendly.
Okay. But what about for Henrietta or Nadi? They have other beings around them. I mean,
that's what I get for all three of you. You're friendly.
Right. I guess
you're open. You're available. And you're available not in terms of time or something else. You're available in terms of thought patterns, in terms of I don't know what this means, but like thought machines. You've made yourself more compatible. They could have reached you a long time ago, they tell me, all three of you. I mean, well, Henrietta, I guess that did happen for you, but at a young age. But yeah, they could have reached all three of you really early. You had to get to a point, I'm sure this is true for all of us, where you had to mature into openness.
Yes.
At whatever age that happened for you, right?
And that's what's happening for the planet right now, not to get off the point, but we're maturing. No. And there's a lot of people who aren't willing to go there into that maturing of openness.
I love that. I'm going to quote myself.
Quote yourself. Wait, Nadi, were you going to say something? Do you want? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my guidance team has used the word available, right? And I love that because it's a receptivity is another word that I like to use. I will turn my video off if I'm freezing, so it looks okay so far.
No, you're
good. You're fine.
So I had Leo with me, and he was a huge white lion up until about 5 when I stopped remembering. And then I was in my 20s when I started working with guidance, you know, and learning about my team and all of these things. But it really was only recently that I got to go out and learned that lion has always been with me. And still is. I mean, huge, white, regal lion companion for life, you know, married, partnered, whatever, pledged. And so one of the things when we talk about, you know, they could have reached us when we were younger, I believe that an environment that validates these things is so vital for people staying open and being open to the fact that it's here and that we are all capable and available. And so it's, it's sort of back to the conversation about how important the conversation is because the less we pathologize and the more, I mean, the Ronnie, who was labeled mentally ill, actually probably totally in touch with other realms. And we just pathologize and we medicate, the ADHD kids. These are advanced beings for the most part that just our society, our civilization, our mindset does not know how to incorporate or embrace. That's my humble opinion. But
or even to utilize the gifts of.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
I worked for 10 years as a therapist on a psychiatric unit, and I can't tell you how many psychotic breaks would have just been people getting in touch with their multidimensionality. So
Yeah.
I just second and go back to how important the conversation is because then more people can feel comfortable to emerge because they don't feel crazy. We pathologize these other realms, and that's why I hub on the ET Roundtable is because I feel it's vital for our emergence into our full selves. And we've got to do that or we're not going to make it. I mean, it's questionable right now anyway. We have to start opening ourselves and tuning into that love, Henrietta, that you're saying, tuning into the love that's always there, tuning into our capacity to connect with unity consciousness. Or I don't know. It's not looking good if we stay in this, polarized, fear-based, scarcity-oriented existence. It's not going to work. We've got to open to what we truly are, and the conversation is what does it.
And also, it occurs to me that one of the things that Marle had said to me in a reading was that she said something that I didn't understand, which often she does, and then it makes sense down the line. But you'd said to me, Henrietta, you have to go and, visit them, like, a different kind of being. And when you're there, they're going to want to know what it is to be human. They want to know that. And if you can give them that information, they'll probably give you some information. So I thought, well, that's all very abstract. Will that be in a dream? How will that happen? Anyway, it did happen. And I realized that I was demonstrating what it was to be human because I'm a very emotional person. As you know, they come up to the surface. So I was kind of, weeping and rolling around and laughing. So I gave them a very theatrical demonstration unwittingly of what it was to be human. And then they gave me something that I felt was very valuable. I don't quite know, what that was or how I will use it. But I mean, and I don't know if I want to say what it was, but it was, it's a potent memory. It's not just a memory, it's a thing that I know actually happened. And then for the first time in my life, I had the audio, I heard a voice which just said from all of them, learn, just learn, So when you're saying that, Nadi, about being open and receptive, I think that, that's the learning is, because if you think you know anything at all, how can you learn, right? So that was that. Ever since that day, it was like, let me just kind of wipe the slate clean as much as possible so that I can be open to these kind of experience where I feel like I received something specifically that I'm supposed to give to the world. I'm supposed to contribute it, but I'm not quite sure how yet.
But is something changing, Marla, in your awareness as like a frequency, a focus, an openness? I mean, is something, what are you sensing about this change in the veils of reality?
Okay, I'm going to try not to give you my own answer.
Okay.
Because I have thoughts on that, of course, Alan.
Okay.
Well, I think I think interspecies communication is the goal here. I mean, I think there are greater goals, but those who can communicate with us, and by the way, I get that they're not all elevated beings.
Right.
I mean, some are not very nice, but they're
Right.
practiced. They're intuitive about making contact, or they've practiced it. So you don't have to be like a good being to make contact.
Or to be interdimensional for that matter, right? You don't have to be a good being to be interdimensional.
Right.
Or
a lot of them are, oh, sorry.
What's that, Maddie?
I was just going to say, you don't have to be that much more advanced to be more advanced than humans. Like, it doesn't
God, that's so sadly true, Nutty. So, but there are those who are highly elevated, I'm just going to call them souls for lack of a better word, who want to get through, who want to help, who have our interest in mind. And one reason they tell me is they have our interest at heart, but they also have their own interest at heart, because the quicker that we realize that we're all united and able to live in multiple dimensions, the easier it's going to be for everybody. So
Yeah.
I think
Good one.
Yeah,
So
I think segmented is maybe not being segmented, which we are very much as humans, as a species, but also from one another. I'm using my words, but it does seem like this is not the ideal, is living apart and living separate. So the higher beings, that's what they say.
But is this curious for you? Or you really, or is it more uncomfortable to go there for you in a sense? I mean, just curious about your process. Because it seems to be a little bit of resistance. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, wondering what's going on.
No, there is resistance, because in my mind, ET is in my human mind, ET is a thing. I mean, it might be a lot of things in my human mind. So I have to when I go there, I have to just get beyond that a little bit. But I don't see them as being this is the other thing that I wasn't getting to what you wanted to address earlier. I don't really see them as that much different than a lot of other things I see. I just see that they're like everything, probably that they're available. But I think lots of things are available.
But there's also is an interdimensional quality, like there are probably beings on different levels. I think maybe you're tuning into the physical part where there probably aren't much very different, maybe more advanced technically, but then there's another level and they may be the same as guides or archangel, whatever that. But the universe is full, like you said.
I think we've mislabeled those. I think we've mislabeled those things. But what are we going to do? We don't have words. Okay, go ahead.
No. But do you get the sense the universe is vast with intelligence and life, and you do, right?
Yeah. And that's not psychic. That's me speaking. Yes, based on all my experiences, but what I see for you in your research field, this is not about you, but getting to the question is, it's all out there, Alan. And for you, really, you just go as high as you can, whatever that means. Just keep going higher, because that's really where your interest lies.
Trying to make a bridge, yeah.
And also in your personality as well, they show me, whoever they are, that you like to get up like an eagle and look down and get that perspective.
The overview.
So you want to be at the trunk of the tree with all the other trunks of the trees. You want to get as high up as you can so you can look back down on humanity and say, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? You're really more interested in the group effort than you are in individuals, they tell me.
That's the Aquarian in me, the Aquarian nature.
That's totally Alan. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Can't help himself, even though he has close personal friendships. He's just got to go.
It's not your interest. The individual human being is not your interest.
Well, we know what they're like. That's why.
You're a caring individual and you have a wonderful heart. It's not about that. It's about your personal interest. They tell me you've been like this since you were 5 years old. You want to go up and you want to look down and you want to see the trends and the waves and the where everything is moving, but you're very curious about cultures.
That is my interest, the cultural shift, that whatever this phenomena is, what is that? What's going to be that change in beingness when the culture changes, when we shift? I mean, that's interesting. And where has the cultures come from? You know, ancient civilizations, what was their modality of time and consciousness and realities like? And there's an ongoing phase change to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know what else they tell me about you?
What else?
In terms of connecting with other, whatever other is.
Right.
You also don't care about the individuals in a group. Let's just say that it's not a group, you know, I don't know. I'm just using our human.
Yeah, the Pleiadians, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you care about them as a group and what they're doing as a group and how evolved they are and what their beliefs are and what their science is. You don't want to zoom into one Palladian or whoever and have like a deep conversation. Not that you wouldn't.
Right.
But if you can get to a group, you'd also like to have the same bird's eye aerial view of what they're doing. So
I'm an anthropologist, a cosmic anthropologist.
Yes,
you love that.
Yes. I mean, the deep conversations with the individuals are great too, but what's the big picture? And how's the picture keep getting bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's very
and
meta.
I would suggest to you actually that you write. I haven't read your book yet, and I will. But I would suggest to you that you write. I mean, maybe you already are. So forgive me for saying this, but you know, a cosmic anthropologist love that. I would ask you through a message to keep writing on that bigger scale and let others write about the individuals while you compile data, but not just data, also your thoughts about what's happening in the universe and where the waves of energy are going.
Well, I want to make a bridge between that and the human progress and all that. What were you going to say, Nadi?
I was going to go New York and I was like, it's meta already. He's meta.
Meta, META.
Because you really do that overview and the metaverse and the larger process and the collective. Yeah.
That's your job, right? I mean, it's down to the rest of us to make individual contact.
Right. Yeah. I want to, maybe I'm an ambassador to the other beings or something, but thank you for that. But do you think in your psychic awareness that things are going to shift, though, that we're getting closer to those other realities? I mean, it's just other people's have a lot.
I think there is a tremendous shift, and I think it actually. This is psychic. This is not me. I think it actually started a long time ago, but you know, it was the understanding, whatever it was never sustained. So if one human was having tremendous insights, I mean, we know from some of our authors and philosophers, I mean, we are not the first ones to think about these kinds of things, right? Some of our poets, but if somebody became famous and wrote something that we can, you know, that survived and we can look back on, okay, fine, or certain civilizations. But for the most part, they're telling me it's a longevity thing. it's not that people haven't been doing this before, but there wasn't I don't know what they mean exactly, enough longevity to push it forward. Now, I'm also going to say that I think there's certain societal structures that did not help, but but we don't have to go into all of that. But we are not the first. We know we're not the first generation to do this, but I'm going to say my own personal opinion. I think that and I know I've talked a lot about culture, but I think that we are open to individuals having their own experiences for the first time. I mean, before like the late 1960s, you needed an intermediary to get where you wanted to go, right? You needed a minister or a priest or a seer or a fortune teller or a something. It wasn't right for you to have direct contact. And I think, a lot of those structures have just loosened up. I think meditation coming to the United States in the late 60s, there are a lot of things that have facilitated a wider group consciousness. That's my own opinion. The first part I said, I don't really understand so much, but there was just a hard time getting like the momentum because there wasn't enough longevity in generations or successive generations to keep this moving forward. Also, psychically, technology is a huge help in this area.
Yes.
And psychically, as we understand more about medicine, about biology, about psychiatry, about psychology, about even business, they say, as we understand more about all of these things, which we're kind of in the infant stages, we'll understand more about this too. So
when you say what do you mean by this?
The things that we're talking about, the being open to interdimensional communication and these spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
I'm really struck, Nadi, by what you said. I even wrote it down, don't use the words crazy or weird, use the word extraordinary.
Yeah.
I wrote it down right here. I think that's so important. I think that's really the next, Alan, you don't worry about this because you have the big view, but the other three of us, I think that we should move forward with that. I know you already are, you two, but
yes, they both are. I know.
More so. Yeah.
I learned in teaching that it is teaching psychic development and spiritual development. I learned, thank God, well, or maybe I knew it going in, like, don't judge, don't criticize, don't say anything negative, and maybe even don't go too crazy with the positive reinforcement. Just let people share their experiences as they are, to speak them out, to share them with others, and just accept everyone's experience. Who are we to say that something is valid, something isn't?
But I'm also curious though, Marla, we should wrap up soon, but how you're shifting, you've gotten to this great place, you're awakened, you can tune in any place you put your consciousness, is boom, it's there. But there probably is some deeper internal like awakening in there of bigger realms or more infinite places in yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit? Where you're shifting?
Well, I'll tell you where I shifted, Ellen.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time in the other realms for the last 22 years. And although I think people who know me as a psychic wouldn't necessarily say that. Look, I'm like conservatively dressed and, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I don't, whatever, I'm just like this, whatever, it doesn't matter. The thing is, what I asked for a couple of years ago was to integrate all of that into my life. And because I didn't feel integrated, I felt like I was living 80% over there and 20% here. So I feel like that, Alan, now I don't know where I'm going next, but I feel like that happened. And I feel like embracing of life in a way that I never felt before. And it feels fantastic.
Well, that's good. We wanted to feel fantastic. All three of us want you.
We want to be integrated, right? We're here. We want to live life.
Yes.
But that is all part of it.
Exactly. That's my feeling.
And Alan, you know what else I think? I saw this client of mine, and I suggested to her, it wasn't my idea, that she go out and just stand on the earth, not for grounding, not for herself, but because she is a bridge between the above and the earth. And all she has to do is stand there. She doesn't have to get messages. She doesn't have to use her brain or her emotions, but just to know that she's being the bridge is like highly valuable. So,
right.
Yes.
I get that sense of peace when you say that, you know, like we actually don't even have to look for the answers or any of this. It's all just happening. Yes, Henrietta.
I mean, the four of us are going to be looking for the answers because we're curious and we're inquisitive and we thrive on information.
Yeah. Well, thriving on information. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things.
Isn't it so good?
Yes.
You know, I would love to leave you guys with two hopeful stories. If you could
leave us with some hopeful stories. Thank you. Yes, please. Okay. You're our guest of honor tonight. So yes.
Oh my God. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Of course.
Good thing I wore lip gloss. Okay. Now listen. So these are such hopeful stories because what I'm about to tell you are two different cultures. That's what I'm calling them tonight, I guess, who, they were successful in achieving peace. So one time I was giving a reading and I asked where this particular client originated. I didn't know what I meant by that. I didn't know what kind of answer. I was just curious. So they showed me a visual of all these little blue like cells in a watery environment. And I don't know where those cells were. I don't know if that was part of her. We don't know. The point about these beautiful little cells is that they had learned that if one of them suffered, they all suffered because their membranes were so semi-permeable. So they trained themselves to have good thoughts, good emotions, respond positively to experiences because that affected the whole. And they were masterful at it. But then I want to leave you with, because who knows what they were, where they were, but I think about them often. I did a reading recently for one of my favorite clients, and I told her, and I'm very careful about what I tell people. I really try to be very ethical and responsible. People ask me crazy questions like, sorry, Nadi, but this is a crazy question to ask someone like, well, when am I going to die? Well, who would ask a psychic that question? And who would give another person that kind of power, etc. But, okay. So I said to this client, now I know her well, so I was okay about saying it, but I said to her, you're not from where most of us come from. For example, if the other side or heaven or whatever, if a lot of us are going back there when we're done, you are not going there. You're going to someplace else. And she said, I know it. And then I said, oh my God, you're people. I began to describe them and I saw them because I'm visual. This sort of line of people, I thought of them as the plains people. I don't know why. But they told me that their societal structures, which are not that different than ours, they have conflicts, they have people who are like police, they have a lot of our similar stuff in place. But their goal is to get back to harmony as quickly as possible. So it's not, for example, we're going to arrest this person and not address the issues. We're going to arrest this person and do what we have to do to make everything peaceful and harmony, and not in an unrealistic way. Like, we know this is our societal goal, and this is what we all work on. Don't you love that?
Yeah. Very much.
That is an anthropological answer. Yes, that is great. No, I love that.
And when I told her that's where she would return, she said, I am so relieved. I know, I don't know, but I know everything you said is right. And those are my people, and that's where I belong. And someday I look forward to that. But that will never leave me, I hope, because that gives us hope for our institutions.
Yes.
No, we are in a huge transition, a huge shift of institutional awareness. And that's why we're here. But before you go, do you want to give out your information? Do you want people to call you for readings?
That's so kind.
Yes,
Thank you.
of course.
Yes, I would love people to call me for readings. And if I ever finish this book, doesn't every author say that?
Yes.
The book hopefully coming out this year it's called Discover the 10 Psychic Senses. So of course I'll let you know. But yes, everybody can find me at marlelombard.com.
marlelombard.com. They can make an appointment and
make an appointment right there. And and I can you imagine the clients who would come through this video? Wouldn't that be fun and fabulous?
Yes, it would. Yeah. Thanks for being here and joining us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
And sharing your intimate stories. I mean,
those were intimate. I am a private person. This does not usually happen.
Not anymore. You're not private.
I guess not.
I really wanted Marle. I wanted to share her more with the world.
Yes. Well, you're always discovering interesting people, Henrietta. But and Nadi, tell us about your workshops and your website and all that.
Oh yeah, thanks. So my website, Galactic Rose Geometry, and I host calls on crop circles and light language and Arcturians and interspecies communication with whales and dolphins, sacred geometry, drawing, and I really love all things that help us get at our multidimensionality, all of the doorways. And so if you come to the site, you can see the event lists and join a call and find the metaphysical doorways, Marla, as you talked about them. I think it's so important to be conscious of our languaging and how we're shaping this new understanding of who we can be, because we really are extraordinary. We really are.
Absolutely. Yes. And yes, thank you, Nadi. And Henrietta,
can you say your contact information one more time?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, thank you. It's Galactic Rose Geometry, all one word. That's my website. And you can reach me through there. And I put out newsletters. I also have a YouTube channel it's got some of Alan's stuff on it, which is Galactic Rose Geometry, I think also. And I do what I do we're doing this, Alan. We do what we do to meet our people, right? So just come play.
And to meet ourselves. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm doing it. More of us. And Henrietta, I'm going to see you really soon. That'll be really fun.
Yes.
We'll do some shows. And yes.
New York.
Yes.
Fire Islands.
Yes. Fire Island.
And
Adi, what country are you in?
Me? I'm in the country of Sedona.
That is that is the country.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Thank you, Marla. Great to meet you. And I appreciate you just tapping in, opening up. And
me too.
Oh my God, it's been so lovely. I thank you so much for having me. Really, such a pleasure. Thank you for listening to all my little stories.
Well, we're listening because you're giving us visions of other realms that are not usually accessible. So, and I think we need to have more conversations about this and all that. And I'm just going to push my book one more time.
Read Alan's book. It's wonderful. There you go.
Because it goes into all that whole realm, from the hardware to the software. And Henrietta is an author in there. Nadi's read her chapter. And you can get it online, Marla, or anyone talking. It's on Amazon. I'll put it but most of my audience probably is aware
I
of
want
this.
to make a little plug for it too, actually, because
What's that?
I mean,
Oh yeah.
make a plug for it too, because not because I'm in there, but and not because it's Alan's book, but it really is a book that transmits something. It leads you through a story so you can get all these different pieces of the puzzle, and you can kind of look at it as a universe that you perhaps haven't considered before.
Right.
And it's, it's not like a really dense, impossible read.
It's an easy read.
It's an easy read, but at the same time, each author has really given them themselves over to explore their little piece of the puzzle. That's what I liked about it.
Oh, I just got a review from Foster Gamble from Thrive, and he liked your chapter, Henrietta. Foster Gamble,
really?
You know who he is. Yeah.
No, you send it to me.
I will. And I'll send you a PDF if you want, Marla. If you don't want to get the book, I could just send you a PDF if you like.
However, that would be great. A PDF would be great, but I'm thrilled to pay for it.
All right. We'll work it out. Okay.
Yeah. I think you should have it.
Really, thank you so much.
I want Marle to have it as a gift.
Okay, a gift. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Henrietta, Nadi, always good to see you, Nadi. Hold the fort in Sedona for us, okay? And I know it's been intense. Thank you, everybody. Everyone talking online. We had a lot of activity in the chat on the YouTube.
Well, Marle, it's so good to really talk about your process, as Alan was saying. Like, it's really fascinating. I want to know a lot more, but we can do that.
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
Thanks.
We'll go deep.
Yes, we will go deeper. Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.